All right, welcome to Views from the Capitol. I'm Jennifer Smith, Director of Government Relations here at MASB, and with me today is Brenda Pilgrim, our Assistant Director of Government Relations, and helping out behind the scenes is Liz Cook, our assistant. Today we're going to talk about the Governor's State of the State address. Just as a reminder, please keep yourself muted. You can put any questions you have in the chat. Please feel free to ask questions as we go, and we'll answer them as we can. So the governor delivered her State of the State address last night. It was her last State of the State address and very much was a victory lap. She spent a lot of time talking about the things that she is proud to have accomplished in the last 7 years. She didn't really lay out a lot of new proposals. She focused on literacy, housing, affordability. A Michigan for all was her theme. So I'm going to turn it over to Brenda to talk about the literacy piece, which was about the only thing she talked about in education.
Yeah, she was very limited in education this year. It was a little surprising. One of the things that she was very focused on and continues to be is a full day pre-K for all. She wants that set and she wants that moving forward. There is funding within her budget, within the executive budget for this. But again, we all know what the challenges are right now with space and with trained personnel, education, so on and so forth. So that's going to be a challenge, but that was one of the key issues that she talked about. One of the other things that she focused on was, again, her victory lap and the science of reading laws and how to identify um, dyslexia using the letter systems and increasing support for reading through professional learning and having counselors available who can specialize in reading and moving the needle on the third grade reading level. Literacy was what she kept coming back to. It was the most important part. And secondly, it was pre-K. Other than that, there was not a lot going on as far as education is concerned. As Jennifer said, it was very much a victory lap of past successes. And the two things looking forward is moving up reading scores and pre-K for all.
And we see some of that reflected in her budget. She did put more money into literacy things within the budget. Normally we see the state of the state and then we see the budget reflect what she said. And this was the other way around. We got the budget and then her literacy piece did highlight some of the things that she put within her budget proposal. And then she talked about housing a lot. And while she did not say it out loud, property tax reform has been on the tip of everyone's tongue in Lansing. The House Dems, Speaker Hall, the governor, they've all talked about some sort of proposal to reform property taxes to cut them for people because our property taxes are too high. So we're watching this very, very closely, as you can imagine. One of the things that keeps coming up is to eliminate the state education tax. From one proposal was only for households. One proposal is to eliminate it completely. This is a 6 mil tax that all properties pay. It only raises $3 billion for school aid, so there's nothing to worry about. But this is going to be something that is not an easy backfill. And Speaker Hall has said that what he has laid out is about $4 billion in tax relief for people, and he will hold locals and schools harmless. The two biggest things he's mentioned are eliminating the set and eliminating the real estate transfer tax. And when you put those together, we're at $3.5 billion for the school aid fund alone. We receive all of the state education tax. I believe the real estate transfer tax is split between us and locals. But to eliminate those two things, I don't know how he gets to $3.5 billion. We've also heard, excuse me, from the House Dems, we've heard interest in the set. The governor has not been as specific in what she wants to do. She mentioned a senior property tax credit that would come off your income taxes for property taxes you paid, but only for people over a certain age and under a certain income. So it's going to be an interesting few months as they want to make these huge changes and cuts to property taxes. It's directly tied to the budget. And we're hopeful, again, that the budget will be passed by June 30th, like law says. I think we have a better chance this year because it is an election year and nobody wants to walk in a 4th of July parade without being able to say that they're going to fund our schools and locals. Some of the other things that we're watching, all tied to that property tax, are expanding eligibility for poverty exemptions or homestead tax credits. This would just raise the eligibility threshold so that more people would qualify. Speaker Hall has mentioned eliminating the pop-up. Not quite sure how, I believe that will take a constitutional amendment, and I'm not quite sure how that will completely affect everybody. And then the one thing that he has talked about to backfill is a luxury tax or sales tax on services. This is something we've talked about for a long time, that if we expand the sales tax base, it'll make it more predictable, less regressive, and reflect the economy we're moving into. People don't necessarily buy things, they stream things, they use things. And we're seeing the whole economy move that way. So really, our sales tax law needs to keep up. We've supported a sales tax on services before. The interesting thing, we'll see what he wants to tax. As we've worked on this proposal, we've made sure that it will not be more regressive, that it will be things that are options, things like pool cleaning or fancy landscaping services. I use bronzing baby shoes in all my examples because I never knew that was a thing until we worked on this. But those sorts of things that aren't taxed right now. Or when you go to the movie theater, you pay tax on your popcorn, but not the movie ticket. So just trying to figure out how we make that system a little more fair is something we've worked on for a long time. We don't know what Speaker Hall's proposal is. He has simply said a luxury tax. He's also said that it would raise the $4 billion. And I'm not sure what all he's taxing to get to that number. That's a huge number. And I'm not sure that we have enough services in the state to get to that point. So right now it's a lot of words, it's a lot of press releases, but we know that there is a push behind it. So you can expect to hear more about that. You can expect to be told to reach out to your reps and senators about that, because this could be a very dangerous road we're going down when it comes to property tax reform. I expect that the local governments are going to be with us on a lot of this because it hits them as almost as hard as it hits us. And they've already taken a hit in last year's budget. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. We hope to be able to stay at tables to talk about this. But at this point, we don't have solid information. We only have the rumors and the press releases that most everyone has seen. But I do think there is a push behind those. I don't think they're empty words. So we will be watching that throughout the budget season to see what they come up with, how bad is it, and how do we mitigate the problem. We believe that if we're going to cut property taxes, we need some way to boost the revenue in the state. We can't tax our way to successful schools or tax cut our way to successful schools. But there's not always a lot of talk about the revenue side, just about the cut side. So we will share any information we get. As I mentioned, we can't settle a budget if they don't figure out the property tax piece because that's such a large piece of revenue. So this could be a very fast, quick, and crazy 4 months as we race toward the budget deadline. Or it may stall. We don't know. But just know that that conversation is happening as you talk to your reps and senators. Make sure they understand what that means to your school. It's nice to say that we have high property taxes. We want to cut it for everybody, but our property taxes are different throughout the state. People are getting hit different and harder in some places than others, but it all funnels into our communities. And so we want to make sure that that's protected. That's about all we got out of the state of the state yesterday. There just wasn't a lot that tied to education. And when we checked the State of the Union, which was a 2-hour speech the night before, there was no mention of education in the president's speech at all. So we still wanted to meet and talk to you guys and let you know what we knew, but that's about all we know. A question in the chat. Any chance the controversial 31 AA conditions go away? We are still in the courts on that. Unfortunately, the governor's budget includes that language again. We're not happy about it. It would be a lot easier if she would just take that out. We wouldn't have to fight about it as much, but we're still waiting on those court cases to work their way through. So at this point, the language is still there, and it's still in the governor's budget. Once again, the House Republicans have said they wouldn't keep it, but they told us that last year and didn't stick to their word. So we'll try to get it out again. I think if the courts rule, that will help, or at least mitigate it in a way that, yes, you have to have an investigation, but you're not waiving the rights of all of your staff and you're not being told exactly who that investigator will be. That would be maybe a compromise we could come to, but at this point, we're just still trying to get the language out. Election bill did not use public funds for elections. That bill was up on Tuesday in House elections. It got some pushback about how are we going to run those elections anyway. And the idea of you could use private funds for them really flies in the face of all the transparency things they want to do for elections by saying, okay, schools, you can't have stealth elections anymore, but you don't have to tell us who's paying for your election. That's fine. It's a little odd how they try to go back and forth. Representative Kelly has said that it's a waste of taxpayer dollars, that we're gambling with them when we try to go to the ballot. The pushback was, this is how it works. We can only go to the ballot to do anything infrastructure related. And there are only 3 dates. It can't be a stealth election. It's got to be in May, August, or November. So the committee may be leaning toward Rep. Kelly on this. I don't know if the full House will, and it certainly won't get traction in the Senate. But step one, it's got to get out of committee, and we haven't gotten there yet. Revenue projections for the next fiscal budget year. They're okay-ish, but there's definitely a downturn, and we're seeing the school aid fund stay mostly stable, which of course means they're going to try to put more federal money in there, or more university money. And in the governor's budget, there's about 500 million more put into the school aid fund from the general fund for universities. That puts us at about 1.8 billion that flows out before we even talk about dollars for the classroom. And it means that if this goes through, we would be paying half of the university budget out of school aid dollars. So as we see sort of the budget, the numbers going down, they're not tragic yet, but they're definitely trending in a bad way. And with the road package that was passed last year, some of the tax relief they've given, we're seeing that definitely accelerated a bit, and with what the feds have done as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces to those numbers. And I think when the Medicaid stuff and SNAP go into effect in 2027, we're going to have a harder time in our general fund budget. 6058, our zombie bill. This is, again, still in the courts. It's up at the highest level at this point. We do believe the Supreme Court is going to hear the case. So now the new questions are, if the court rules that the bill has to be presented, what happens next? And so we're back into a whole new realm of new questions that we still don't know the answer to. If it's presented to the governor and she doesn't sign it, what happens? Because the session it was passed in is over, so it should be a pocket veto, but the session that we're in is still running. So does it go into law without her? That's the question that we'll have to figure out. But we're still waiting on a final court ruling. There is a belief we need an answer. We can't let bills just sit out there forever. And if there's no death date for this bill, if Hall never presents it, who's to say the next speaker doesn't pick it up and present it? And so you're talking about legislation passed 3 years, going to the governor 3 years after it's passed. So there's a lot of questions around just what this means, other than the terrible financial effect it's going to have on schools, locals, the state, anybody with a public employee. So right now, it is still in the court. I think, if I remember right, the Supreme Court is scheduled it for this spring. But I don't hold me to that. But I do know that they said that they would take it up. So working on the budget on time, yeah, she's going to say that. Hall's going to say that. Speaker Leader Brinks is going to say that. The question is, will they actually be able to come together and do it? As I said earlier, I think that the election is going to have more play on when the budget gets done than they do, really. You don't want to go out in an election year and not have a state budget. So that's what I think is hopeful. But again, we'll see. Right now, the subcommittees are holding hearings on their budgets and various issues within them. So right now we're on track. But I think we'll get a better idea of how, if we're going to stay on track later next month. The current campaign promised to eliminate the income tax. Um, I don't think that's going anywhere right now. They can't afford to get rid of property taxes and income taxes. We'd have no money to run the state. So I think that there's a lot of talk about eliminating the income tax, but I think they've shifted to property and their focus is on the property tax instead. The Board of Education candidates to register by party. Nope, I think that's dead. We haven't heard anything about it since it was last heard. Of course, nothing's dead until the duck quacks at the end of the year, but I don't think that has any traction. Even sitting and listening to the testimony and the questions in committee, I'm not sure it had the votes to get out of committee. So I believe it's sitting over in the corner and we shouldn't see it again. But of course, everything's fair game and lame duck at the end of the year. The stopping the pilfering from the school aid fund. We've been yelling about this since 2010 when the first loan was made. Unfortunately, it's going in the wrong direction. Most believe it was not the intent of Proposal A, but when Granholm gave the $150 million loan to community colleges, and then Snyder took over the next year, the door was open and he rammed a truck through it. So moving 1.8 billion back into the general fund would be very difficult without a revenue increase. So trying to get it out is hard, but we will never stop trying. Like I said, if this budget passes as the governor wrote it, it's 1.8 billion that leave before we can even put it into a classroom. And that doesn't include some of the other line items where money flows to a university instead of flowing to a K-12. So it's frustrating. And it's a problem. It's unfortunately something that we start to get traction. We got a resolution introduced this year by House Republicans to go to the ballot and say money is not for university operations. And our sponsor, after we did all the yay, we're doing this, he pulled back and said he's reconsidered. And so he won't push his resolution. So every time we take a step forward, it feels like we take 5 steps back. But know that that is always a concern. It is always something we're talking about. And you're right, universities can use their money for a lot of things. They have capital outlay, so they can get state funding for infrastructure. They have tuition. They have multi-million-dollar foundations, all the things that we don't have. But yet they're pulling their operating dollars out of our budget. And when you talk to the universities, they're not asking for it out of our budget. They're not saying no because they know if it doesn't come out of our budget, they're not going to get an increase. So they just want money just like everybody else. They don't really care where it comes from. Are there any other questions we can answer for you today? Legislation being proposed on merit curriculum. Um, I've heard a little, I don't know that we've seen much. Brenda, can you think of any specific examples that we've seen at this point? Okay. Um, so there are rumors. There's a bill to eliminate the um course names. So you would just have the types, not the names. But that's a Democratic bill and a House Republican committee, so I don't know that that's going to move. But I don't know that I've seen much else directly related to the merit curriculum. Brenda, anything to add? I see you unmuted.
No, I don't have anything to add. There was talk about it earlier, but that seems to just kind of have died away, and I haven't, nothing's come into committee that has made me think about it or has made it pop to the top of the list.
A couple other questions about potential legislation. We haven't seen anything about the 180-day thousand or 1090 hours. We expect that just to stay as it is. Um, Facility improvement funds. So we have that infrastructure fund in the school aid budget that has not given out money yet. And I didn't see anything in the budget this year that would do that. So we're still just sitting on a couple hundred million, I think, in that infrastructure budget without a plan to spend it. Any other questions we can answer? We will make this video available. The link will be in News from the Capitol tomorrow. We'll have it up on our website tomorrow. So if you have others that wanted to be here but couldn't make it, they can watch that video then. It'll be about as exciting as the state of the state was last night. $100 million competitive grant. Is this specifically for improvements, infrastructure improvements? Melissa, could you unmute and tell me a little bit more about what you heard?
Just in the legislation last year, it was the competitive grant for infrastructure improvements. I just haven't seen anything. I didn't know if that was still going to be available this year.
I did not see it in the budget this year, and you're right, that wasn't there last year, but I don't remember seeing anything out of MDE about granting those either. So that it may be caught up in all the work MDE had to do in October. But we'd have to check in with them and see what happened with that. Because you're right, we had competitive grants and I haven't heard anything about them since the budget passed. No word on mandatory kindergarten. It comes up every once in a while. But Senator Polhanke was supposed to introduce a bill again this year to try to get it through, and I haven't seen it introduced. I know it's something on her list, but I haven't seen it. So I don't think we're going to do that this year. 31 AA, basically, just to reiterate, is we don't know. This MDE has put out some. There's even confusion about that. And we don't know going forward. We're waiting on the courts. The governor put it back in the budget. We'll fight to get it back out. But until the courts rule, I don't know what to tell you, unfortunately. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Stay tuned for all the great things that are supposed to come up this year. Other than the budget, that property tax fight, it might be a quiet spring. We'll see. But as always, if you have questions, please reach out, let us know, and we will do our best to answer them. And thanks for joining us.